All right, this week we are going to discuss subclinical magnesium deficiency and could it be a primary driver of heart disease as the #1 killer in the United States? And I'm excited to cover the research on this because as a functional medicine doctor, functional medicine operates from a paradigm of catching things early and nuance, whereas conventional medicine is you're healthy until you're diagnosable, and there's not a whole lot of nuance there. It's very black and white. Functional medicine functions from the gray spectrum between black and white. And so most doctors running labs, in a conventional model, if your lab isn't lab low or lab high, they're going to tell you you're normal. Whereas functional medicine's looking at your labs and saying, well, this is functionally low, which is still within the conventional normal range, but outside of optimal. And so I'm excited because the study we're going to cover today is looking at subclinical magnesium deficiency, not necessarily frank magnesium deficiency. So this study goes a long way into showing that, at least regards to magnesium, a functional deficiency drives disease, even though you're not going to see lab low levels. So let's dive into that. But before we go there, I want to just mention that last week we created a video, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago now, but it's on the YouTube channel. We discussed how the decline in cardiometabolic health in the US is a public health emergency, and that was based on new American College of Cardiology study looking at the last 20 years of US cardiometabolic health. And so heart disease is the #1 killer. Cardiometabolic health is the true pandemic, as we argued in that video, in the United States. And magnesium deficiency might be the driver behind the pandemic, beneath the pandemic. So that's the case I want to suggest today. So we're going to be looking at this study that was published in Open Heart in 2018, and the title is Subclinical Magnesium Deficiency, a principal driver of cardiovascular disease and a public health crisis. So let's switch over to the PDF of this study. And here it is in all its glory. So I'm going to read a fair amount today, but I think it makes the case strongly for us. And we're going to look at what is a subclinical magnesium deficiency, what could it cause, what are symptoms of it, what are signs of it, how does it tie to heart health. And so if we start with the abstract here, we'll start with what they say. So they say, because serum magnesium does not reflect intracellular magnesium, which the intracellular version makes up more than 99% of total body magnesium, most cases of magnesium deficiency are undiagnosed. So what that's saying is that running a serum magnesium, which is a blood test for your magnesium level, doesn't reflect what's inside your cells. And what's inside your cells makes up 99% of your total level. So if we're running a serum magnesium, which is what your doctor will run if they're concerned about it, that's only telling us about 1% or less of your body's total stores. And you'll see as we go through the paper that that's not a good marker, and that you can be deficient and have that marker be normal. So we need to look at intracellular stores. And from a blood perspective, one of the best ways to do that is running red blood cell magnesium levels. So moving on. Furthermore, because of chronic diseases, medications, decreases in food crop magnesium content, and the availability of refined and processed foods, the vast majority of people in modern societies are at risk for magnesium deficiency. Certain individuals will need to supplement with magnesium in order to prevent suboptimal magnesium deficiency, especially if trying to obtain an optimal magnesium status to prevent chronic disease. So here we go in the second or third sentence of the paper, they're already differentiating and becoming nuanced into suboptimal magnesium deficiency and optimal magnesium, which is great. Subclinical magnesium deficiency increases the risk of numerous types of heart disease, costs nations around the world an incalculable amount of healthcare costs and suffering, and should be considered a public health crisis. That an easy, cost-effective strategy exists to prevent and treat it should provide an urgent call to action. So this is great because with an inexpensive nutrient, we can potentially prevent incalculable costs around the world due to heart disease and suffering. And so why isn't this being shouted from the rooftops? Why isn't this getting the press that, pharmaceuticals get? Well, because it's natural, unpatentable, cheap, widely available, and effective. So what does magnesium do? Well, magnesium is necessary for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. So enzymes run physiology, and enzymes are proteins that do work. All enzymes require nutrients to function. So of the thousands and thousands of enzymatic processes in the human body, over 300 of them require magnesium to work. If you don't have sufficient magnesium levels, if you're deficient, then your physiology takes a big hit. And you'll see that when we go over the list of possible symptoms. 90% of your total magnesium is contained in muscles and bones, 90% of which is bound and 10% is free. So in the serum, 32% of magnesium is bound to albumin, whereas 55% is free. So that's probably a lot of jargon to you, but I read that to you because if you're keeping track, up above we said, and again it says right here, extracellular magnesium, so magnesium outside of our cells. Magnesium accounts for only 1% of total body magnesium. Okay, so if we're running serum magnesium, then that's only showing us 1%. Most of it is in the muscles and bones. Okay, and even that 1% in the serum, that's a tiny fraction of even what's in the serum, because 32% of what's in the serum is bound to protein. So anyway, just realize that you're getting a very, very small picture of it if you're running the blood test. Some of the main functions of magnesium in the body include maintenance of ionic gradients, like keeping sodium and calcium and potassium in balance, electrolyte balance. Cellular and tissue integrity, so healing and repair. Mitochondrial energy production. And then DNA, RNA, and protein production and integrity. So the whole health of essentially every tissue of your body requires magnesium. The elimination of magnesium is mainly controlled by the kidneys. Despite kidney conservation of magnesium, it can be pulled from the bone as well as muscles and internal organs in order to maintain normal serum magnesium levels when intakes are low. Thus, the first green block there, thus a normal serum magnesium level does not rule out magnesium deficiency. Pregnant pause, right? That's important. So just because your serum magnesium is normal does not mean you actually have sufficient magnesium levels. So when we go through the symptom list and the signs list later, if you're having some of these and you consult your doctor and say, hey, well, can you run my magnesium? I think I have an issue. If they run it and it comes back normal and they turn you away and say you're fine, it doesn't mean you're fine, because your body may be taking magnesium out of your bone, muscles, and organs to keep that number looking fine, right? And in so doing, it may be driving a deficiency. And so you can see after the green there, it says, pulling it out of the bone predisposes to osteopenia, osteoporosis, and fractures. In order to prevent chronic diseases, we need to change our mindset away from exclusively treating acute illness and instead focus on treating the underlying causes of chronic disease, such as magnesium deficiency. So again, these authors say we need to move away from the very black and white conventional medical mindset. And they're not saying it, but they're, I interpret it as we need to move towards a holistic, detailed, nuanced, individualized, and specific functional medicine mindset. There are two types of nutrient deficiencies: frank deficiencies, such as scurvy when you're deficient in vitamin C, or a goiter if you're deficient in iodine. That's the first type. The second type is a subclinical deficiency, which is clinically silent and leads to reduction in physiological, cellular, or biochemical functions. It is the subclinical deficiency that is most concerning, as it is hard to diagnose and predisposes to numerous chronic diseases. While both frank and subclinical deficiencies result in negative health consequences, frank deficiencies have obvious symptoms, whereas subclinical may have negative or variable health effects that are not so apparent. For example, vascular calcification, which you're not feeling and there's not many diagnostic tests to see. The evidence in the literature suggests that subclinical magnesium deficiency is rampant and one of the leading causes of chronic diseases, including cardiovascular disease and early mortality, which is death, around the globe, and should be considered a public health crisis. And to the right there, you can see they cite a study that says approximately 50% of Americans consume less than the estimated average requirement for magnesium each day. And the estimated average requirement is low. So up to 50% of the American population is deficient in magnesium. What might magnesium deficiency look like? Let's look at that. So the authors put together a long list of potential symptoms of magnesium deficiency, to the point where they had to break out a second column. So here are causes of magnesium deficiency first, and then we'll get to symptoms. Acetaminophen toxicity, okay? Alcoholism, aluminum from environment and diet. Well, one significant environmental source of aluminum is vaccination. Alcohol again, aging, okay? Aging promotes magnesium deficiency due to, as we age, we produce less stomach acid, and stomach acid's needed to digest our food, particularly our proteins, and plays into mineral absorption from that food. Antacid drugs, bariatric surgery, so a stomach bypass or a small intestinal bypass, calcium supplements, high calcium, magnesium should be in a ratio. So if you're driving high calcium via calcium supplements and or you have low magnesium, that creates an imbalance. Caffeine promotes magnesium deficiency. The US is addicted to coffee. Cancer, celiac disease, colon removal, Crohn's disease, chronic stress. Oh, we all have that, right? Diabetes, a diet high in fat or sugar, diuretic medications, which are commonly given for high blood pressure, which high blood pressure you'll see is a clinical sign of magnesium deficiency. Emotional or psychological stress, enzyme dysfunction, estrogen therapy, excessive menstruation, so heavy cycles, fasting, and fasting would drive magnesium deficiency if when you're eating, you're not taking in enough magnesium. Multiple medications here, kidney disease, low phosphorus in the diet, insulin resistance, laxatives, low salt intake, low selenium intake, gut issues, well, that opens up a whole world, liver disease, pancreatitis, pregnancy, strenuous exercise, vitamin B6 deficiency, and vitamin D issues. It's important to know that if you're someone that's got chronic vitamin D deficiency, and no matter how much vitamin D you take, it doesn't move, then it may be that you have a magnesium deficiency, and that's why your D isn't going up, because you must have magnesium to properly absorb and assimilate vitamin D. So those are potential causes, a few of them, a long list. So what would that look like clinically? From a lab perspective, you might have lab low magnesium, you might have lab low calcium or potassium. If they run an EKG, you might have a prolonged QT interval or ST segment depression. So it can show up on ECGs. In terms of clinical signs of deficiency, you could have aggression, you could have anxiety. Why might you have anxiety? with a magnesium deficiency? Well, there's multiple mechanisms. One mechanism is we talked earlier about enzymes require magnesium to work, right? Well, anxiety is suppressed by GABA. GABA is our natural anti-anxiety neurotransmitter. That's our natural Xanax. Well, GABA comes from glutamate, which is our excitatory neurotransmitter. So glutamate would be the gas pedal, GABA would be the brake pedal, okay? You've heard of glutamate before because you've heard of MSG, or monosodium glutamate, right? Food companies add that to our food because it's excitatory and it tricks our brain into thinking that that food tastes better than it really does. In so doing, you buy more and you eat more, so they make more money. So glutamate is excitatory, GABA is inhibitory. We need GABA as an anti-anxiety and to motor down and go to sleep, etc. Well, to make the conversion of glutamate to GABA requires an enzyme, GAD65 in this case. And this is one of those over 300 enzymes that we talked about earlier that require magnesium. Magnesium is one of the nutrients that enzyme requires. Another is iron, and another is vitamin B6. Okay, so if you're lacking any of these, and in this case, we're talking about magnesium in today's video, so we'll focus on that. If you're magnesium deficient, then production of GABA is decreased because this arrow can't move forward. So you have less anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, which promotes more anxiety. That's one way magnesium deficiency could lead to anxiety. Another way is in this same picture, if we're lacking magnesium and we're not going towards GABA, we have a buildup of glutamate. Well, glutamate, too much glutamate drives what's called excitotoxicity. And I've made a video on this in the past, and you can check it out on my YouTube channel. Well, excitotoxicity drives neuron death and drives brain inflammation, which drives anxiety. So magnesium can block excitotoxicity by blocking the NMDA receptor, which glutamate stimulates to drive the excitotoxicity, and magnesium can promote glutamate flowing to GABA, which also would decrease the excitotoxicity because we're getting rid of the glutamate this way. So kind of a sidebar there, but that's real-time physiology for you and how magnesium is a great natural anti-anxiety. And one more piece with that. This is getting a little bit ahead, but there are many forms of magnesium. So if you've bought a magnesium supplement, if you turn it around and read it, it'll say magnesium, and then in parentheses, it'll say magnesium oxide or citrate or succinate or glycinate or orotate. There's multiple different biochemical forms. Well, specific to anxiety, my favorite one is either glycinate or threonate, because glycinate will plug the NMDA receptor to help stop the excitotoxicity, and threonate has calming effects that also can help drive GABA in different ways. So if you're someone suffering from anxiety and you want to use magnesium to help or to see if it helps, look for the magnesium glycinate version. Moving on, other clinical signs of magnesium. Ataxia is imbalance, confusion, cramps. Cramping is a common one. If you have cramps or twitching, that might suggest magnesium deficiency. If you crave chocolate, that might suggest magnesium deficiency. So those are a couple of things to remember. You might become more irritable, have weakness, tinnitus, so ear ringing. How many people out there have ear ringing and have ever wondered if magnesium's tied to it? Probably not many. So that might be a simple solution for some people with ear ringing. Vertigo, and then vitamin D resistance is what I talked about earlier. If you're one of those people with chronically low D and it doesn't go up no matter what, taking magnesium may help you raise your D levels. And then severe clinical signs tied to magnesium deficiency, arrhythmias, all right, heart rate and rhythm issues. If you're having You might think you're having tachycardia or AFib, and maybe that's just magnesium deficiency. If you have calcification of tissue buildup, you might need magnesium. Cataracts, depressed immune response, depression, hearing loss, heart failure, high blood pressure, migraines. Okay, migraines and headaches would tie into that excitotoxicity drawing I made a few moments ago. That's a big driver of migraines. Osteoporosis, if you're magnesium deficient, that drives the osteoporosis because over time, as we said earlier, you're pulling magnesium out of the bone to keep your blood levels normal. Seizures, magnesium, sudden cardiac death, tachycardia. So many people are walking around with one or more of these symptoms, and almost none of them have had their magnesium checked. And if many people are walking around with these symptoms and up to 50% of the population is magnesium deficient, there's a high likelihood that a significant number of those people could be benefited very cheaply and easily by getting their magnesium levels up. So if we boil it down to, we started the video by saying the magnesium deficiency may be driving the cardiovascular disease pandemic. And so this paper ends here with possible cardiovascular manifestations of magnesium deficiency. We said them earlier, but let's just repeat them. High blood pressure. High blood pressure is a big issue, and that's kind of the gateway drug into the rest of cardiovascular disease. So we need magnesium for smooth muscle relaxation. Magnesium is one of the best natural muscle relaxants. Epsom salts are magnesium salts, So if your smooth muscles contract, if they don't relax, they contract. And smooth muscles control vascular dilation. So are you dilated or constricted? Well, if you're constricted, that increases resistance to the heart and raises blood pressure. So if you're deficient in magnesium, so that your smooth muscles can't relax, that would be one mechanism by which it's driving high blood pressure. Arrhythmias, heart rate and rhythm issues, calcification and atherosclerosis. All right, if you're laying down calcium in your vasculature, take the arteries, for example. If you're laying down calcium in the arteries, that drives arterial stiffness. And again, that drives cardiovascular disease because now the arteries aren't pumping the way they need to. So the heart has to work harder to pump through the system, and that can lead to heart hypertrophy or maybe heart failure, depending on the case. And you can see below that is heart failure. Increased platelet activity and clotting. We need magnesium to make enzymes related to platelets and clotting and preventing those. Heart attack, stroke, sudden cardiac death. So the authors conclude subclinical magnesium deficiency is a common and under-recognized problem throughout the world. Importantly, subclinical magnesium deficiency does not manifest as clinically apparent symptoms and thus is not easily recognized by the clinician. Despite this fact, subclinical magnesium deficiency likely leads to high blood pressure, arrhythmias, arterial calcification, atherosclerosis, heart failure, and increased risk for clots. This suggests that subclinical magnesium deficiency is a principal yet under-recognized driver of cardiovascular disease. So again, subclinical magnesium deficiency does not manifest as clinically apparent symptoms and thus is not easily recognized by the clinician. That's the big take home there, and that is the functional medicine approach. That is what we need to be looking for. We don't want to wait till we have symptoms or wait till we have the heart attack to realize we're unhealthy. We want to find these things ahead of time and pay attention to potential symptoms we may be having and investigate if that is tied to a nutrient deficiency, such as magnesium in this case. So I hope this helps, and I hope this helps the viewers out there that may be struggling with one or more of the health issues listed as possible symptoms. It may provide them with an avenue to pursue in terms of cracking their case.